You wake up already carrying a weight you can't measure. Your body rises, but your mind drags along invisible chains. The day hasn't even begun and everything within you already feels heavy. Your thoughts, your chest, even the silence itself. You look around and everything seems normal, yet inside you something feels off, something that doesn't quite fit. We live in a world that glorifies movement, productivity, and results. Bauman said modern life is liquid. Everything flows fast, nothing stays, including our energy. And in this relentless flow, a person's worth comes to be measured not by what they feel, but by what they produce. You work, meet deadlines, answer messages, try to show up, and yet you feel like it's never enough. It's a quiet, persistent feeling. The guilt for resting, the anxiety over not doing enough, the doubt that something is wrong with you. Nietzsche wrote about the burden of will and the values imposed on us. He who has a why can bear almost any how. And maybe your exhaustion is a sign that the why society offers you, to be more, do more, never stop, isn't truly yours. The constant rhythm swallows us without notice. Every notification, every task, every external goal becomes an invisible stone we carry on our shoulders. And still, we learn to blame ourselves for feeling the weight. But this isn't laziness. It's the natural resistance of body and mind to a current that ignores human limits. The paradox is that the harder we try to prove we can keep up, the more we feel our own insufficiency. Productivity should serve life, but life has come to serve productivity. Every step we take is measured, compared, and judged. And while everyone around seems to maintain the pace, you feel yourself stumbling over your own humanity. The day stretches out like a river of tasks, and every decision, every action, demands energy that is not infinite. Bauman warned that this fluidity of modern life leaves people constantly displaced, insecure, and overwhelmed. And amid this invisible pressure, your mind whispers, maybe I'm weak, maybe I'll fail, maybe I'm lazy. But the truth is different. What you feel isn't a flaw, it's a warning. It's your body and mind saying, you were not made for this pace. And acknowledging this is the first step towards seeing that the problem isn't within you, but in a society that expects everyone to function like human machines. It is in this understanding that freedom begins, realizing that resting, hesitating, slowing down is not weakness. It's a quiet form of resistance against the logic that confuses movement with value. It's the awareness that life itself deserves care, attention, and respect before it serves the goals of others. As your coffee cools and the world moves on around you, you feel the weight of the day, but you also begin to notice something new. It's not you against the world. The world is against your natural rhythm, and that doesn't make you any less capable. It's simply a reminder that humanity isn't built for infinite speed, and that your silent resistance is, in truth, an act of intelligence, sensitivity, and preservation. And so, even in exhaustion, there is room for the question that moves everything. If it's not laziness, then what is it? If it's not failure, then it's survival. And understanding this changes everything. The way you work, the way you relate, the way you see yourself. It's the first step toward realizing that being human doesn't mean being constantly efficient, but being conscious of your own rhythm. You feel the weight of the day, yet there are moments when you can barely move. Tasks pile up in your mind, and even the simplest ones feel like mountains impossible to climb. The word surfaces in your awareness, like an almost cruel whisper, laziness. Maybe I'm lazy, you think, feeling a twinge of shame as if admitting it could ease the guilt. But Gabor Mate reminds us that the body always speaks, and that deep fatigue, lack of motivation, and hesitation are not signs of moral failure, they are warnings. The body, mind, and soul protect themselves when the pace is unsustainable. And often what we call laziness is simply silent resistance, a natural mechanism of preservation in the face of demands that ignore human limits. Look at those around you. Many follow exhausting routines and seem to function perfectly, but perhaps they've lost touch with their own fatigue, as if ignoring the body were a sign of strength. You, on the other hand, feel every stone placed on your shoulders, every imposed demand, every expectation from others. And this sensitivity is not weakness, it is awareness. Silent resistance manifests subtly. You can't focus on trivial tasks, yet you flourish in activities you choose freely. You feel drained by imposed obligations yet creative when acting from your own will. It's a form of intelligence that still listens to its own limits, even in a world that ignores them. Nietzsche wrote that many of the social norms and expectations we follow are, in fact, impositions that shape our behavior, not our essence. Hesitation, fatigue, the sense of inadequacy, these are signs that you still preserve something authentic. The awareness that not all external pressures must be accepted. Laziness in this sense isn't a lack of action, it's a selective economy of energy. It's the body saying, not now, not this way, not without purpose. And accepting this is accepting that humanity itself needs space, pause, and attention. The paradox is that society applauds those who never stop, while the body that resists is silently condemned. But if we pay attention, we see that this silent resistance is a form of instinctive wisdom. It's the recognition that infinite speed is unnatural, that rest is not failure, that slowing down can, in fact, be an act of courage. And here is the realization that changes everything. Laziness is not a flaw. It is an indicator that you still listen to yourself, that you still feel, that you still exist beyond external demands. It is an invitation to redefine success, productivity, and value, not by what others expect, but by what preserves your energy, your creativity, and your well-being. And when you realize this, the question arises naturally: if silent resistance is so important, is all the rush and overload of the modern world really progress? Or are we merely moving the body while the soul remains stagnant, exhausted, and unseen? And it is at this point that an even deeper understanding begins. Emotional and psychological exhaustion is not your failure, but a reflection of a world that ignores human limits. And paradoxically, this silent resistance, this apparent laziness, is what still keeps you whole, sensitive, aware. The awareness of this mechanism changes everything. It allows us to see that slowing down is not stepping back, that refusing meaningless tasks is not failure, that protecting your energy is not laziness but intelligence. And this realization prepares us to understand the next aspect: the psychological cost of exhaustion and how constant pressure shapes our mind, our emotions, and even our very identity. You move through the day carrying an invisible backpack filled with weights no one else sees. Every notification, every meeting, every unmet expectation adds another stone. And in the end, the body keeps functioning but the mind feels worn down. Exhaustion seeps into every gesture, every thought, every emotion. Viktor Frankl reminds us that the meaning of life is not found in tasks completed, but in recognizing the value of what is lived. And when we ignore our own rhythm, life becomes a succession of obligations that don't belong to us. Anxiety arises, silent. Irritation creeps into conversations. Insomnia becomes a nightly companion. All of this is a signal that the body and mind are asking for help. But in the modern world, ignoring these signs has become the norm. The culture of hustle teaches us that being busy is a virtue. And the more we overload ourselves, the more we convince ourselves that failure is weakness. But the truth is different. The psychological cost of exhaustion is deep and invisible. It's not just a lack of energy, it's the fragmentation of identity. It's feeling inadequate even when giving everything you have. It's having a lifetime of external achievements and still feeling empty. Bauman reflected on the insecurity of liquid life, where everything is transient and nothing lasts. The fluidity of modernity transforms our sense of value into something dependent on others' approval, productivity, and performance. And when we can't keep up, guilt appears as a constant shadow, even when our body and mind beg for a pause. Schopenhauer wrote that human will is in constant tension between desire and limitation. And in our time, this tension is amplified. We want to be everything at once: efficient, creative, successful, healthy, social. The price is emotional exhaustion, which manifests as anxiety, depression, irritability, and a sense of emptiness. The body and mind scream, but society teaches us to ignore the cry. Think of how many times you felt guilty for resting, hesitating, or failing to meet every expectation. It wasn't laziness. It was your body saying, "You're moving too fast. You need to stop." And when we ignore this message, psychological wear becomes almost inevitable. The paradox is cruel. The harder we try to prove we can keep up, the more we feel insufficient. And the more society celebrates those who never rest, the harsher we judge ourselves when we need a pause. Exhaustion then becomes more than physical. It seeps into self-esteem, into our sense of worth, and into the very essence of being. But there is a way to acknowledge this reality without losing yourself. It is realizing that feeling deep fatigue, lack of motivation, or irritability is not personal failure. It is the natural response of a body and mind being pushed beyond their limits. It is the awareness that resting is not retreating, that slowing down is not giving up, that preserving energy is not weakness. And it is in this recognition that we begin to free ourselves. To understand that the modern world values movement, but true life values meaning. That constant pressure shapes thoughts, emotions and identity, but does not define who we are. That silent resistance, often labeled as laziness, is actually instinctive intelligence. When we start listening to the body and mind, the rhythm of life changes. Awareness of our limits becomes a tool for survival and well-being, no longer a source of guilt or shame. It is a reconnection with ourselves, a step toward understanding that being human doesn't mean being efficient all the time, but being conscious of our own pace. And deep down, there is a quiet relief in this understanding. The weight doesn't disappear immediately, but now it makes sense. Fatigue ceases to be an invisible enemy and becomes a signal, a message deserving attention. And by listening to this message, we begin to make room for something that has been denied for far too long. The possibility of living without burning out, of existing without reducing ourselves to the measure of productivity, of being human before being machines. You grow up hearing that discipline is virtue. Those who organize themselves, keep schedules and work without complaint are morally superior. And those who hesitate, who rest, who slow down are seen as weak, lazy, incompetent. But the truth is far subtler and deeper than this simplistic morality. Nietzsche already warned about imposed values. Many of the norms we follow don't arise from life itself, but from a society's will to power dictating how we should act. Discipline, as we've been taught, often becomes an invisible yoke. It doesn't protect, it demands. It doesn't free, it imprisons. And gradually, you begin to believe that your exhaustion and anxiety are personal failures, when in reality, they are the consequences of rules that ignore human limits. Look around. Influencers, co-workers, thought leaders, they all seem to keep impossible schedules, endless nights, lives carefully curated on social media. And we compare ourselves. We try to fit our humanity into a mold that was never made for us. And the cost is invisible yet real, physical, where chronic anxiety, a sense of inadequacy. Schopenhauer said that human will is constantly strained between desire and limitation. And today this tension is exploited almost industrially. We want to be everything at once, efficient, healthy, creative, social. But moralized discipline doesn't teach us balance, it only demands more. And so, those who respect their limits feel guilty, while those who ignore warning signs are celebrated. True discipline is not the kind that ignores limits, but the kind that respects one's own body and mind. It is not measured by the number of tasks completed, but by the ability to preserve energy, focus, and creativity. It's the difference between obeying a system that exploits you and acting according to the natural rhythm of life. Imagine a rope being stretched to its maximum. With every unnecessary strain, the risk of snapping increases. False discipline demands that you keep pulling even when the rope is about to break. True discipline, on the other hand, is the hand that loosens the tension at the right moment. It is not weakness, it is wisdom. And it is in this understanding that you begin to realize how unfair it is to blame yourself for your own fatigue. The modern world has turned human limits into moral imperatives. Resting became a sin, hesitating became weakness. But listening to your body and mind is not failing. It is protecting your own humanity. By internalizing this awareness, you begin to see a new possibility. The possibility of organizing your life not according to external expectations, but according to the rhythm that truly sustains your energy and creativity. And in the space that emerges between effort and rest, something precious arises: clarity, authenticity, and meaning. Reflecting on this, a silent yet profound question emerges: is all the pressure we feel to be disciplined really necessary? Or have we been conditioned to believe that overload is a sign of value, when in fact it is just the consequence of a system that has forgotten what it means to be human? And this realization prepares us for something even more essential: understanding that respecting limits and slowing down is not just an act of survival, but a form of freedom. It is the possibility of existing without losing yourself to others' expectations, of choosing how to spend your energy without guilt, of living consciously and fully, not merely busy. You realize that for too long you've been reacting to the world instead of acting for yourself. Every notification, every external demand, every expectation from others seemed to dictate your steps. And gradually, you lost touch with your own will, as if you had handed over the wheel of your life. Jung wrote about the need to integrate the shadow, to recognize the parts of ourselves that the world ignores or represses. And perhaps this is what modern exhaustion forces us to confront. The real needs we ignore, the emotions we deny, the body we overload. Regaining control is not about becoming hyperproductive or meeting impossible standards. It is about rediscovering your own rhythm, your own energy, your own voice. It is realizing that every choice can be conscious. Saying no when something drains you, prioritizing what truly matters, protecting the time left to breathe and feel. Imagine a song you play on repeat. If the external volume is constant, there is no room for the internal melody. But when you reduce the noise, you begin to hear your own music, your intentions, your desires, your limits. And it is in this space that control emerges, not as mastery over everything, but as the freedom to choose what sustains life. Society has conditioned us to value movement over meaning, effort over attention, quantity over quality. But true recovery happens when we allow ourselves to breathe, observe, and reorganize our priorities. When we begin to realize that resting, reflecting, and slowing down is not weakness but preservation. Frankl emphasized that meaning arises in the way we choose to live, even in the face of external limitations. And perhaps the greatest meaning we can reclaim is the very act of choice. Deciding how to spend energy, how to invest attention, how to care for ourselves. Every small decision, every conscious pause, is an act of freedom. And it is in this process that life begins to realign. The tasks still exist, the expectations still arise, the world still moves fast. But now you are no longer carried along. You choose your pace. Every gesture is made with attention. Every action carries intention. And at the end of the day, there is a silent yet profound feeling. You are whole even if you haven't accomplished everything. Control, then, is not about endless productivity but about presence, awareness, and integrity with yourself. It is the ability to choose, amidst chaos, what nourishes your energy and what does not deserve space in your life. And it is in this space that you find something the modern world has almost made us forget: authenticity. Recognizing this brings a quiet but irreversible shift. The sense that you don't have to prove anything to anyone, that you can respect your own rhythm and still live fully. And in reconnecting with this freedom, you realize that the exhaustion that once felt inevitable now becomes a signal, a lesson, and a guide. Every pause, every conscious choice, every respected boundary is a way of reclaiming something essential that the world tried to steal: your own time, your own energy, your own life. And deep down, you understand that control is not an external goal to achieve, but an internal reconciliation, a return to yourself. You finally realize that fatigue is not your enemy, nor is the feeling of inadequacy proof of failure. They are signals, silent messages, reminders that you are alive and that you need to listen to yourself. The culture of exhaustion insists on confusing movement with value, effort with virtue, speed with progress. But when you slow down, something inside you begins to change. The cycle of external pressure loses some of its power. Schopenhauer wrote that life is suffering, but also that wisdom lies in recognizing limits and acting with awareness. And perhaps this is the key, understanding that we don't need to follow imposed rhythms, nor prove our strength through exhaustion. The body and mind have their own time, and listening to them is not weakness. It is a reconnection with your own humanity. When you begin to respect your limits, you realize that the productivity that once seemed essential is not the measure of your value. Value lies in noticing, in feeling, in choosing. In being present even as the world moves fast and indifferent. It lies in creating spaces of silence, attention, and care that no one can take from you. Viktor Frankl said that meaning arises when we consciously choose how to respond to life circumstances. And in a world that glorifies overload, freedom consists in choosing where to invest our energy, our attention, and our time. Every small act of self-care, every decision to slow down, every quiet refusal of external pressures is a form of liberation. Look at your routine now with new eyes. The tasks still exist, the demands still arrive, but something has changed. You no longer move only out of obligation. You move because you choose, because you understand your rhythm, because you preserve your body, mind, and soul. And in the silence of that choice, you discover something the modern world almost always ignores. Life does not need to be rushed to be meaningful. Exhaustion does not need to be normalized. Fatigue does not need to be glorified. And above all, you realize that what once seemed laziness was never laziness. It was resistance, instinctive intelligence, silent self-care. Bauman reminded us that liquid modernity disconnects us from ourselves. But by slowing down, by listening to the body and mind, you reconnect with what is real, deep, and essential. And this reconnection is liberating. It doesn't solve all external demands, but it transforms the way you approach them. The weight of the world does not disappear, but you learn to carry it consciously, without losing yourself. And in the end, there is a silent yet profound feeling. You are whole, even if imperfect. You have learned that slowing down is not failure, that resting is not laziness, that respecting limits is freedom. And perhaps this is the greatest victory of all. To live consciously, sensitively, humanly, even in a world that insists on measuring value by the pace of those who never stop. The cycle continues, the world keeps its rhythm, but something has changed. You have learned to walk at your own cadence, to listen to your signals, to choose your own energy. And in the quiet of this learning, you discover a kind of freedom the culture of exhaustion can never take away. A silent, deep, inalienable freedom. The freedom to exist according to your own humanity,